When Elder Ukuba stepped onto the platform and announced that his son needed the blood of a virgin to be saved, no one could have imagined that the village of Tambi would respond with a deafening silence. For years, no bride had left her home without a blood-stained sheet displayed to all as a symbol of her purity. But the moment the elder asked one simple question, it became clear. There were no virgins left in the village. How could this be? The village of Tambi lived by strict, unshakable rules. Each day began with the rising sun and ended with its setting. When prayers echoed through the forests and the smoke from fires rose into the sky, mingling with the scent of food and wood. Life flowed steadily and peacefully. The men worked in the fields and forests, hunting and growing crops, while the women tended the home, raised children, and prepared their daughters for what they believed to be the only important role in life, being a good wife. The young girls of the village, dressed in gray dresses with their heads covered by scarves, moved quietly and modestly through the village streets. Their conversations were restrained, and their eyes were always cast downward. They knew no other life. For them, the future was already mapped out. Marriage to a groom chosen by their parents, bearing children, working in the garden, and maintaining peace in the family. Great importance was placed on virginity. Every girl knew that her purity was the key to the happiness of her marriage. The elder women of the village taught them this from a young age. When a girl turned 12, she would be told, "Your honor is your gift to your future husband. You must guard it as your most precious treasure." There was no room for doubt or questions in these lessons. Every girl understood. Without her honor, she would not earn the respect of either her husband or his family. Particularly strict was the village elder, Ukuba. He ensured that traditions were followed without question. His word was law, and no one dared to defy him. He was tall, with a stern face, and his dark eyes seemed to see through everything. He had personally overseen the marriages of his 3 daughters, each of whom preserved her virginity until the wedding, and the blood-stained sheets were shown to the entire village as proof of the honor and dignity of Ukuba's family. But all eyes were especially on the elder's son, Uba. As the heir to the village's leadership, great expectations were placed upon him. Tall, strong, and with a proud bearing, he was a role model for the young men of the village, and many of the girls cast secret glances his way. Parents dreamed of marrying their daughters to him, for a marriage with the elder's son was the greatest honor any family could hope for. However, soon after Ubo turned 20, disaster struck. The young man suddenly began to weaken, his body wasting away, and his face growing pale. Neither herbalists nor shamans could help. The village healer, an old and wise man, examined Ubo with concern but was unable to find the cause of his illness. Finally, he dared to give the elder a terrifying diagnosis. "Your son is dying, Ukuba. His soul is leaving his body, but there is a way to bring it back. The blood of a virgin over the age of 15 is needed. Only this can save Ubo." The elder remained silent for a long time, pondering the healer's words. To him, this didn't seem like a problem. His village was filled with girls, each of whom proudly followed the ancient laws. He was certain that finding a pure girl would be easy. After gathering the council of elders, Ukuba summoned the entire village to the central square. That day, the villagers felt something unusual in the air. People whispered about Ubo's illness, speculating about what could have afflicted the young and strong heir. But when the elder rose to the platform and addressed the crowd, all voices fell silent. "My son, Ubo, is ill," he began. His voice steady, yet concern flickered in his eyes. "To save him, the blood of a virgin is needed. The one who offers her blood for his healing will become his wife." The crowd froze. Parents gathered in the square exchanged glances, while the young girls lowered their eyes. For a moment, it seemed that everything was as it usually was. But then, something incredible happened. Not a single girl stepped forward. Ukuba waited, but there was no response. The tension grew heavier. Faces in the crowd turned pale. Some began to exchange uneasy glances, realizing that something was amiss. One mother, nervously adjusting the edge of her scarf, nudged her daughter forward, but the girl didn't take a single step. The unease was mounting. The men standing beside their wives started to murmur quietly, their faces growing darker with each passing moment. "Where are your virgins?" the elder boomed, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. His voice, usually calm and confident, now seethed with fury. "Where are those who followed the laws of our ancestors?" The girls remained silent. They hid their faces beneath their scarves, afraid to meet the elder's gaze. In that moment, the silence became unbearable. No one could comprehend how such a thing could happen in a village that had lived by strict rules for centuries. Evening descended upon Tambi, but an unusual silence hung over the village. After the gathering, when not a single girl responded to the elder's call, the villagers returned to their homes, avoiding each other's gaze. Doubt and fear lingered in the air. The strict rules that had governed generations were now under threat, and no one could explain how it had come to pass that there wasn't a single virgin left in the village. Elder Ukuba sat in his home, his head resting heavily in his hands. He sensed that something dark lurked behind this strange silence, but he couldn't grasp what it was. His son, Ubo, lay motionless on the bed, growing weaker with each passing day, while the solution to their problems slipped further from his grasp. In the village, something new was beginning to take root. Something insidious and destructive. A force that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their lives. That same evening, as dusk settled in, a woman named Muhammad, the mother of one of the girls, approached the elder's home. She knocked on the door, her hands trembling with anxiety. When the elder opened the door, he expected to see an answer to his plight, but her face held not just concern, it was laced with fear. In a quiet, choked voice, she whispered, "I need to tell you something, Ukuba." Entering the house, Muhammad sat on the bench, her gaze directed downward. It was as if she struggled to find the words to begin, but the fear for her daughter's life and the crumbling of their foundations compelled her to speak. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, "All of this, everything that's happening, it's the work of one woman. You know her, Abba." The elder raised his head, confusion flashing in his eyes. "Abba, the hairstylist, she's just an ordinary woman who styles our daughter's hair before their weddings and gives advice." Ukuba couldn't believe that this quiet, unassuming woman could be connected to the unfolding events. "No, not quite," Muhammad interrupted him. "She doesn't just style hair, she teaches our daughters other things. Things no one should know about." The elder furrowed his brow but remained silent. She instills in them that what matters for a wife is not honor, but the ability to please her husband. She teaches them how to seduce men. But that's not all. Abba sends them to men from neighboring villages, claiming it's their rite of passage. And these men pay her for it. Our daughters, unsuspecting, do everything she tells them. Ukuba couldn't believe his ears. He jumped to his feet and began to pace nervously around the room. His mind struggled to comprehend such a revelation. Abba, whom everyone knew as a caring and wise woman who helped young girls prepare for marriage, suddenly emerged as the central figure in a terrifying intrigue. But what about the sheets? Ukuba growled. We saw the blood. Everyone saw it. How is that possible? Mohammed hesitated for a moment, then, looking straight into the elder's eyes, she quietly replied, "It was all part of her plan. She uses magic. She knows how to create illusions. This has all been a deception, and we, elder, have lived in this deception for far too long." Ukuba slowly sank into a chair, feeling as if the world around him was crumbling. His village, his people, they were all part of a vast web of lies spun by one woman. But what was he to do? How could he reveal the truth without destroying everything that had sustained life in Tambi for generations? That very night, Ukuba decided to take action. He called for his loyal assistant, Kayo, a strong and intelligent man who was devoted to the elder and his family. Kayo was known for his sharp mind and ability to solve the most challenging problems. "We must expose her," Ukuba said, relaying to Kayo the details he had heard from Muhammad. "If this is true, then Abba has destroyed our village. But if it's a lie, we need to find out who is behind these rumors." Kayo nodded. He remained calm, but inside him burned a deep hatred for the woman who could so deceitfully trick them all. "I will do whatever is necessary, elder. But if the rumors are confirmed, we must act decisively." The next morning, Kayo set out to find Abba. The woman was easily located in her small house on the outskirts of the village. Welcoming visitors with a friendly smile, she was busy as usual, braiding hairstyles and preparing herbal brews and oils for the girls. But something felt off. A dark glint lurked behind her gentle eyes. "Kayo, how lovely to see you," Abba greeted him, unaware that he had come with very different intentions. "We need to talk, Abba," he said calmly, though his voice was filled with underlying tension. "About your lessons for the girls." The woman's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly masked her unease. "What lessons do you mean?" she replied, her tone innocent. "I'm just teaching them how to be good wives, how to maintain beauty and order in the home. You know, these are important things for every woman." Kayo stepped forward, narrowing his eyes. "Really? And what about your lessons in love? What about those men from neighboring villages you send our daughters to? You've taught them to deceive us all, Abba." A mask of icy calculation settled on the woman's face. She realized her game was nearing its end, yet she still tried to maintain control over the situation. "You don't understand," she said coldly. "I've given these girls power. Do you really think your strict laws matter? No, Kayo. Men don't want modest, silent wives. They want those who know how to please. I've merely helped them become happy." Kayo felt a surge of anger rise within him. He realized that Abba showed no remorse for her actions and had deliberately manipulated the girls, destroying not only their lives but the future of the village as well. "You've destroyed our village, Abba. And for this, you will have to pay," he said quietly but firmly, preparing for the final confrontation. Abba understood that her time was running out. The village was no longer under the control of her magic and deceit. She knew that this time, simple persuasion or illusion would not be enough. The next morning, the entire village gathered in the square, where an old meeting platform stood. A tense atmosphere enveloped the scene. Everyone sensed that something significant was about to happen. Families arrived one by one, lining up in front of the platform, awaiting the truth that would either free them or shatter everything they believed in. Elder Ukuba, though aged considerably in recent days, approached the center of the square with resolve. His voice was hoarse, yet every word was clear to the crowd. Today, residents of Tambi, we will hear the truth that has been hidden from us for too long. This truth will shatter our past, but it may also save our future. His gaze lingered on Abba, standing off to the side. Surrounded by several village warriors to prevent her escape, she stood tall, her eyes once gleaming with cunning, now filled with a cold defiance. Kaio stepped forward to the center and spoke loudly. For a long time, we believed we were following the ways of our ancestors, guarding the honor of our daughters. But all this time, a deception has been hiding in the shadows. The woman we trusted, the one we considered a mentor to our girls, has betrayed us all. Kaio's words rang out like thunder. People began to murmur among themselves, and women held their daughters' hands tightly, anxiously awaiting what would come next. Understanding that she had nothing left to lose, Abba decided to speak up. Yes, she said sharply and loudly, cutting through the whispers. Yes, I taught your daughters the art of love. And yes, I sent them to men from neighboring villages. But do you know why I did it? Because your cruel laws and expectations were destroying these girls from the inside. You thought that modesty and purity were the path to happiness? No. That was a prison from which I freed them. I gave them not just knowledge, but freedom. The crowd gasped. Women looked at Abba in horror, while men stared at her in bewilderment. Some felt a strange sense of guilt for having believed in this cruel deception for so long. Yet others were ready to tear Abba apart for her treachery. Her words seemed to open their eyes to their own helplessness before such a skilled manipulator. You have destroyed not only families, Kaio continued, refusing to let the crowd dwell on her words, but also the very foundation that held us together. Your magic turned our daughters into slaves. You sold their bodies, deceiving them and us. You took advantage of our faith and blindness. Abba scoffed, her face remaining as cold as before. She knew the truth could no longer be hidden and decided to play her last card. You were all part of this game. The men stayed silent because they were pleased with their wives, who now knew how to satisfy them. The women might have suspected something, but turned a blind eye because they feared the truth. And now, when all the lies have come to light, you want to shift all the blame onto me? The crowd erupted into angry shouts. One man, his face twisted with fury, jumped up and charged toward the platform with clenched fists. But Kaio stopped him. No, Abba. Today you will stand trial before the village. But before that happens, we must break your spells. We must restore the truth in our homes. Kaio raised his hand, and several young girls were brought to the platform. These were the very village girls who had attended Abba's lessons. They looked frightened, but their eyes reflected confusion. Many of them truly believed they were following the teachings of this woman, seeing her as their mentor and savior. One of the girls, Talima, stepped forward. Her long gray dress was disheveled and her veil was askew, but her voice was steady. We believed her. We thought she was helping us. But now I realize that it was all a lie. Abba used us, and I can no longer remain silent. Elder Ukuba looked at the girl with sorrow. His heart ached, knowing that the village he considered pure and innocent was, in fact, steeped in deep darkness. But he also knew this was the moment of truth, a moment when everything needed to change. Today we will put an end to this deception, he said, addressing the crowd. From this day forward, our daughters will be free from enchantments and lies. We will start anew, but with the understanding that truth is always more important than any traditions and laws. Amidst the tense murmurs and the trembling of the people, the trial of Abba began on the platform. Her betrayal could not go unpunished. The elders deliberated and rendered their verdict: exile. This was the harshest punishment in Tambi, signifying eternal banishment from the village and the loss of all rights to return. But the most significant change occurred not in the court, but in the hearts of the people. As Abba was led away from the village, the residents realized that the old laws could no longer exist in their former form. They were now compelled to reevaluate their views on honor, love, and what truly makes a person pure and worthy. The village, engulfed in tragedy, began to rebuild. Men and women started to speak to each other honestly and openly. Parents stopped imposing strict rules based on fear upon their daughters. Thus, Tambi, having endured destruction and deception, found a new path. A path based not on blind faith in old traditions, but on truth and respect for oneself and one's loved ones. Together, they built a new society where every voice mattered, and mutual understanding became the foundation of their lives. And although the road to healing was long, a spark of hope ignited in the hearts of the people of Tambi. In this spark, illuminating the darkness of the past, they found the strength to move forward, together, as one, in search of a new life, filled with honesty and love. May your life be full of joy and limitless possibilities. Thanks for watching. Be sure to share your opinion and don't forget to write a comment. Subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.